So I know you've already done most of the work on Hazel here. Would you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Theresa Walker. We have a small family farm in Durham, New Hampshire, which is on the seacoast. And for about 15 years, we've raised Romneys and natural colored sheep. And it's something we enjoy doing as a family. It's something we enjoy doing for many reasons. One of them is this competition, like we have here, this showing. You know, taking your sheep out on the road and comparing them to the sheep that are raised by other people is something that we've really enjoyed. So the competition of it, when our son Tim, who joins us, was younger, I used to talk with friends and they go, "Why are you doing this?" And really, you know, they were at soccer meets every weekend, right? Or they were at ice hockey competitions.
Yeah, well, this is
what we did as a family, right? Is take our sheep out on the road, and because it provides an enormous opportunity to educate people about not only being a shepherd and about sheep and about fiber and wool production, but also about that working landscape that we feel as a family is really important to defining New England, especially New England, where farms are small, they're embedded in communities. It's not like out west where you have, you know, hundreds or thousands of acres and communities that are set up with, you know, farming centers. Really, New England history for hundreds of years has been small farms embedded within a town, surrounded by other land use activity. And where we live in seacoast New Hampshire, our landscape is really defined by mills on tidal rivers. And those mills were put there because of the tidal rivers, but they were also there to process this raw material that was coming in. In some cases, it was cotton coming from up south, from the south, but often it's from wool, from fiber coming from animals that were raised in New England. And so that institutional view shed, that memory is still with us every day if we drive around New Hampshire. You know, most towns we pass through in the seacoast have woolen mills there, some type of mill, which just kind of lays that history down for the fact that, like 1845, there were about 100 I used to have a poster with this, but there was like 150,000 people in New Hampshire and almost 500,000 sheep. So those stone walls, those mills, that landscape of New England, which is defined by rolling hills with a stone wall and woods, that really is a shepherd's landscape. It was created by shepherds a long time ago. And so then you fast forward to today, where I think people are often nostalgic for that kind of view shed. You know, they see it in calendars or they read about it in books. But the fact is that activity still takes place, and this is an example. The Sheep and Wool Festival is a great example of the fact that people are still doing this activity and that it's something that's worthy of people's support.
And when you talk about the shipping line, now are we shipping out or in at that point in time when you have all of these little farms that are set up next to the shipping quarters? Are you going east or west or?
No, I think they were making it right there, right? That's where the population center was for this part, you know, for our country, was along the eastern seaboard. So they were manufacturing for use right there.
Okay, yeah. Now that makes sense because at that
That's
point
where the
in time,
population was. Yes. Yeah, it was kind of, you know, it was manifest destiny and going west that led to the demise of these farms, these small New England farms, right? I think, you know, if what I remember from history is correct, they came back from Civil War and discovered, wow, you could actually farm on land that wasn't embedded with granite like it is in New England. You know, you could probably put a shovel in the ground and it could go more than 4 or 5 inches before it struck something. Yeah. So that and the change in transportation and how goods could get to market, obviously, too.
That infrastructure is the big thing that always makes it or breaks it.
That infrastructure, where we still have to all talk about it today. But New England certainly was a real center for fiber and wool and shepherding.
Now it almost sounds, we just got back from the United Kingdom and we did this wonderful trip that was heavy sheep intensive, but it sounds very much like the farms that we saw in England, that those low rolling hills, rock walls, all that, sounds very much like what you're describing in New England.
Right. Well, you think there was probably that same attractiveness, like the people that came and settled here were able to adapt maybe to a climate that was a little harsher, but the landscape and what they could do with it was pretty similar to what they were doing back at home. We spent a lot of time there too. Of course, their farming, their whole commodity base is very different there. Like, you know, the prices you get for sheep in England. We stayed on a farm in the Peaks district where they had paid the equivalent of like $75,000 for a ram, you know, because it was a terminal sire, and they have that system there of raising sheep and
they moved them down.
yeah, move them down and feeding at that point, you know, before they left the EU, be feeding all those other nations, you know, producing a product that was being exported and feeding people all over. That's certainly not the case in this country, right? Most people who go to the grocery store and buy New Zealand lamb to eat, right? They're not necessarily shopping from a local farmer's market and eating lamb, or they may not even be aware that that lamb is available locally.
Yes.
And in New England, we're fortunate in that we have lots of immigrant groups that come in and favor lamb, and so that we do have access to people who appreciate lamb grown, you know, by a small farm where they are familiar with the practices that they can harvest themselves. Yeah.
Very definitely, ethnic markets have changed the landscape for small ruminants here, and we are so underutilized in this country for small ruminants, at least in my opinion.
I agree with you. I mean, at all different scales, and I think that's an opportunity that we have at festivals like this, is that you often meet people who are intrigued or interested about, you know, they see themselves as being able to raise sheep, have a small flock in their backyard. And I think we're the perfect people to talk to, most of the people here, because it is done on such a scale that's very adaptable to perhaps to whatever those people are thinking about.
Yes.
Yeah, so here you have the opportunity to learn about the different breeds and how they have different characteristics that may lend themselves to wherever those people may be or whatever they're interested in. You know, not at this festival necessarily, since it's a fiber festival, but certainly there are breeds now that we've developed. Katahdins out of Maine, really the only breed developed in this country, which are hair sheep.
Yeah.
Right? Don't need to shear them.
Yeah, St. Croix
Great for the
and
meat market.
Katahdins.
Exactly.
Don't have to do anything.
Yep.
Right.
Dorpers are having a moment.
Yeah.
We're seeing dorpers everywhere. Another sheep that you don't have to shear.
Yes.
But that's the complete opposite of why we're into it, because we love the fiber. So.
Okay, and I want to talk to you about that. Obviously, not just because you have a gorgeous sweater on and know your wool.
Yeah, so this is all from our flock too.
It's
yeah.
beautiful. But you have natural colored sheep, and if you would explain, please, what that means. Is that a breed definition? Is that just a shade? Is it one color or the other? Explain what a natural colored sheep is.
Natural colors are kind of a catch-all. So the Natural Colored Wool Growers Association was started to really promote the fact that fiber and sheep grow in something besides white. Right, so you can think of the commercial scale. So when people envision most sheep raised in the western part of this country, or whether it be in Australia or New Zealand, it's going to be a white sheep, and that makes sense because the end product is going to be to dye that fiber to a specific color. It's going to be specific, you know, a color they can replicate over dye lots. So Natural Colored Wool Growers Association was started to really capture and encourage the production of fiber that's grown naturally on the animal in different colors. So it's anything but white. The sheep we have here is actually a Romney, but she has what's called a morit, that recessive morit gene that gives her this beautiful color.
Like a whiskey color.
Yeah,
almost,
isn't she beautiful?
Yes.
Yeah, so you can see it's really her ears, her eyes, her nose, her hooves are all that beautiful brown color.
Look at that.
Yeah.
You bounce a quarter off of that.
I know. We've got her all fitted for the show. She'll show tomorrow here at Rhinebeck. But so natural colors can be black, gray, wart colored, and all those kind of shades in between. There are many sheep here who will fall into that category, but you don't have to be one particular breed. So Hazel is a Romney, but we have other natural colors here that are a mix of Romney, Merino, and Cormo. So they can be a blend. It doesn't have to be one specific registered breed.
It's always fascinating to me how we take one thing and make it just like making a cake, right? You have all these different breeds, and that's actually my husband and I got started on that whole thing about the whole idea of animal breeds that we've had for a long time and maintaining those heritage breed animals. But one of the beautiful things is I'm not an absolutist. You can mix and match, and you have all kinds of shades in this world that you can get as long as you preserve those original ingredients.
Yeah, and different types of crimp on the wool, different types of uses that they lend themselves to. Yep. And I think you know, sheep were probably domesticated after dogs, the second animal that humans domesticated, and we talk a lot about that with people that visit us or visit with us at fairs. Is that you can see, right? They're incredibly efficient converters of carbohydrate to protein.
Yes.
You know, so for whoever those early humans were, realized pretty quickly that they could take carbohydrate, convert it into protein, whether it be fiber, meat, or milk, with this animal that is not a predator, that really looks to something else to be its, you know, shepherd or whatever that is, you know. So I think they were very wise when they selected sheep for that purpose. That's for sure.
And as we now know, that also pasture restoration is not a bad thing. They can run around and they replenish the carbon
whole
wherever.
regenerative soil. I mean, I think we're learning through climate change that soil health is going to be something that we really all have to pay attention to.
Yeah.
And these guys are, with their small feet and just how they eat and how they poop, really lend themselves to that soil health and regenerative agriculture. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now I want you to go back for a minute to the whole idea of the colored sheep. I know that when we were over in England, we were speaking with the Leicester Longwool Association people.
Yeah.
Great, fantastic people. But the topic of the black sheep came up because they do have certain associations that do not allow colored sheep in, because that's, for some reason, that's something that came from somewhere else in their minds, and that indicates so that they're the black sheep of the family, and so we're not going to allow that. And yet there's this marvelous palette of shades that are, is it one of those things where you need those other recessives in order to say, you know, it's a part of all of the flock? Or what would your perspective be on it? Because are you just about the wool itself? How it gets there is not important? Do you kind of know?
Yeah, I think obviously there are many breeds that have wide ranges of color, and those breeds are going to have different attributes in addition to their fleece, you know, whether it be frame size or mothering ability or whatever those combinations are, small, large, all kinds of things. And so humans have manipulated that gene pool for so long, so successfully, that we have just thousands of breeds now, like we do of dogs. And I think so people just, like probably we are with dogs, there's something that speaks to you about a particular breed, right? So I think we've taken that now in the show ring to that next level, right, where people are really focusing on a purebred or a sheep that's registered that has certain attributes, and then those attributes get kind of magnified in a way. So I guess what we say to the kids in the 4-H club is what you want in the show ring and what you want in the barn can be two different things, and that's okay. So in our perspective, it's really about the fleece quality and the health of the animal. So they are in the show ring for just 2 years of their life, but they'll probably be in the barn for another 10.
Yes.
Yeah. So if they are able to give us a beautiful, consistent fleece from front to back, it doesn't matter to me what breed they are necessarily. Yeah.
Yeah, and even within the breed, you have a lifespan. So I know in England that was a really fascinating thing. I still don't quite have it 100% down pat, but they have a mule association, and it talks about the lifespan. The first 2 years, you might have a Scottish blackface, and she can produce madly up in the hills for the first couple of years, where another sheep would not survive. And after a couple of years and a couple lamb crops, they might bring her down to the next level.
Right, down to the Midlands, and she grazes there until she gets to the end.
Until she gets to the end, and they're kind of crossbreeding for a purpose. It doesn't mean they're sterile mules, but it does mean that they breed for purpose, because they have to live with those animals and they have to take care of them.
Right.
So anything that is liable to be susceptible to worms, or anything that might have issues with lambing, and you're gonna kind of
have
that
scale,
to,
right? You're gonna have to think about it, and I'm sure the larger sheep ranches out west have the same things, right? They're adapting to much harsher conditions, whether they're grazing on BLM land and then bringing them back down, and those folks aren't here at this scale, obviously, but you're right, those attributes are important. And for Romneys, I mean, I liked Romneys for a long time, and we had a couple of other breeds, but they do have certain attributes that really lend themselves to the scale that we like. So fleece grows really quickly. It's about ½ inch a month, so we can get 2 crops off them a year.
Yes, you can.
So we're selling yarn, on a small scale through fiber events near our farm in northern New England. But we have a good customer base who's really interested in yarn that's not dyed. It's the color of the animal's fleece. They love the narrative behind the story, small scale, something in a town where they may be familiar with or live nearby. But where we are in northern New England, our summers are getting wet and wetter and more humid, probably like other parts of the East Coast. So Romneys have that resistant to foot rot, which is something that they were bred to have, hundreds of years ago in the Romney marshes in England. And that really lends itself to the landscape where they live with us. So this summer, if they were outside grazing, they probably spent most of the summer with their hooves in, if not water, then very wet grass and very wet soil. And so that characteristic is something that's really important. So other people may live, in other parts of New England where they don't have that low-lying pasture like we do, and so perhaps other breeds have something else that they're looking for. But in our case, the Romneys bring that. So a fast-growing fleece in a wide variety of colors. They're a larger framed breed than others.
Yes, they are.
Yeah,
This is solid
yeah,
sheep.
I do like
How
solid
much of
sheep.
that? I'm trying to find how far it goes in there because,
Yeah.
that is really
thick. Yep. So she was shorn the first week in June, and she's been trimmed for fairs since Labor Day. But she's growing a really nice fleece. Yeah. And so she'll be shorn next week or the week after, and the yarn will go to the mill.
So when you have an animal like this and you say you win in the ring,
Mm-hmm.
are you breeding this animal specifically? Are you winning the ribbon so your farm just is really represented?
Yeah.
Or is it something where you're saying I want the genetics of this animal, or I want my overall agricultural practices to be recognized as a person that is is trying to
Right.
make a living in this as a business? Which one of those things?
It's all those things, I
All
think.
those things.
I think we love coming here for the community, where people will stand here and talk with you about sheep all day and your sheep, and you hear about their sheep. I do like the competition behind it, and even though we say every judge has their own, there's a breed standard. Here that doesn't apply, it does apply, but this is a different show from any other show that we compete in that it goes by, not by breed, but by fiber type. So this ewe will tomorrow be in the ring with many different breeds of sheep. So every other show she's competed in this year has been just with Romneys. Natural colored. So in this case, she's going to go up against probably a half dozen other breeds that are under what we call the long wool category. Yeah.
So this is sort of a best in show
It
of
is.
the American
For us, it's a
Kennel
best
Club.
fleece, right? This is where
Yes.
he's really looking at fleece
Yes.
attributes. Yep.
Yes. Yes, this is a beautiful animal. I am one that really likes the natural colors. I mean, I appreciate vibrant colors and things, but this, you can't beat this. And
No,
look at
she is the
the
cutest thing.
life that exists in
Right.
it before you cover it with another color. So this is
Yeah.
a really beautiful.
And I'm sorry we don't have skeins here. That was kind of, we were packing at the last minute and we should have brought some. But certainly there's plenty of vendors here with beautiful skeins from their farms that show those that natural luster, that something that's coming from the health of the animal. It's not been stripped and dyed away or bleached away. So I think when you knit with this, like my sweater, you just see all that animal health, right, contained in the garment.
It's just absolutely lovely. Now, I'm glad you mentioned the family component of it because you have helpers here and family members. Can you tell me who has come to this show with you?
Yeah, my husband Patrick is here. He's over there. So he's, there's three of us back home in New Hampshire that are like key infrastructure.
We're not looking at you. We want to see your sweater. So
Patrick's wearing his sweater.
This is your knitting.
Yeah, it is, and that's the fun part about this festival is you guys are capturing all weekend here, which is people coming and wearing what they call their Rhinebeck sweater, right? So in our case, it's our Rhinebeck sweater, but even more, I love about it more is that it's from our sheep, some who have been here and have competed here. So that just makes it that much more fun, yeah.
That is an amazing thing. I mean, how do you... the fact that you have taken that from the very beginning all the way through to the end is such an amazing, awe-inspiring thing. I mean, I know they have these sheep to shawl competitions and the thing, but it's really something to say that sweater, I can tell you exactly how many hours it took to raise that thing from beginning to end and to knit on top of it. And in many ways, I can't say the knitting is nothing because look at that. I mean, that's phenomenal. But it's like when I raise chickens and I would accidentally drop an egg every once in a while and I would just be crushed because I know what it takes to bring that egg to the kitchen.
Yeah, and I think that happens for many participants here, even if it's not coming from their own animal that they raised, is that you're surrounded by tens of thousands of people who really respect the craftsmanship and understand why you work so hard to make that Rhinebeck sweater.
Yes.
And that this is a place where you can show it off, because everyone who's passing you can really appreciate that work, right?
Yes, and this is why too, and I know some people that are buying, they go to Hobby Lobby or wherever they're going to buy it, and they buy wool. They might not really truly understand the value of that wool and why it costs so much. And there's a sweater over here that we almost bought last year. It was just absolutely beautiful. It was $500.
Right.
And I talk about it. That woman, we interviewed her. She's making $2 an hour.
Right.
By the time all is said and done.
Right. Yeah,
You don't.
No, it's truly a
You
labor
don't.
of love. And I think for most people here is, the common denominator is we have very different breeds, and we may come from different places and have different off-farm jobs, but we really love our animals and we love sheep.
Yes.
And that's why you're still doing it, is because at the end of the day you have this relationship with these animals that you really value.
Yes.
And they bring so much to your life that it's great to be here and to be with people who understand what it's like to be in the ring and have a judge, praise your work, right?
Yes.
So.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, and I will say that's the conceptual thing, the philosophical thing that I really like, is that there's different threads and there's different colors and there's different patterns, but you're all weaving in the same kind of mindset. It's all bringing everybody together, even if it's a different shape or color or size or whatever. Everybody here has got that same thing where if there's a pattern to it. Does that make sense?
No, it does make sense. And I think what's unique about this event is that you have tens of thousands of consumers here who are already here about the fiber, or 30,000, right?
Yes.
So this is the 5th weekend in a row for us for a sheep show, and usually we're on a more traditional fairground where there's lots of different animals and lots of different things going on. And not everyone walking through there is a fiber enthusiast or a knitter or a crocheter or just an admirer of that work. That's not the case here.
Yes.
Here we have an audience dedicated to people who this is how they choose to spend their time.
Yes.
So if we can make the connection to them that, this is where the product is coming from, it's grown here, it's grown locally or regionally or nationally, and that they could benefit so many people by just really asking, where did I, before they go and pick the yarn for the next project, where should I get it from, right? And so we sell our yarn locally, and it's fun on Instagram or other places to hear from people who'd be like, oh, I'd love to buy a skein from Hazel. Well, and we don't have an online shop.
So how?
And I think because we'd much rather sell to people around us, who are there, and also who are vested. We love where we live. They love where we're living, and if we can make the connection with them about valuing this type of agricultural activity where we all live together, that's really the customer that I'd like to engage with.
Yes.
And but so when you get a request through Instagram or online saying, I'd love to buy something, I'm like, oh, we don't have an online shop, but I know there are sheep really close by to you somewhere, and go to your state, whatever you're looking for. There's resources all across the country that can help you find that farm and that local fiber. And, please go and give them your business. So now there's the Fiber Shed organization that was started in California. We started about 2 years ago, the Northern New England Fiber Shed, which is an affiliate of that. There's a Fiber Shed affiliate for New York too, and Southern New England. And that's going to be a great resource tool to point people in different parts of the country to say, hey, I'm so grateful you're interested in local fiber. Click here to find the farmer that's closest to you. Yeah.
So do you have at least a breed organization that you also support, or not really at all?
No, the Romney breeders and the natural colored wool growers that all these sheep are registered with.
Okay, so how do you know where people might find them? If they wanted to find a natural colored sheep in their neck of the woods.
Neck of the woods. So they would go to the Natural Colored Wool Growers Association, and there's a membership directory on that website, and that's the same for every breed of sheep. Now, this is a real small subset of shepherding. Not everyone raising sheep. A small percentage of people raising sheep are in the show ring and doing this type of showing. A lot of people have sheep and are spinning fiber, and they may, there are vendor booths here filled with people who have never had sheep in the show ring. So in that case, they may not have registered their animals with the breed registry. So you could go to the Fiber Shed directory, you could go to your state Department of Agriculture. I think many people that are here also have are vendors at their local markets or started there at one point. So that's another source, is to look for those local farmer networks and identify where that local fiber may be for you. Yeah.
Well, I so appreciate it, and I appreciate you bringing this gorgeous sheep here. I mean, she is
She's
just
very
absolutely
good.
beautiful.
She's the best behaved that's out here. That's why we pulled her up here.
Well, but it's also, I mean, especially on a day like this, you look and it's raining. This isn't quite, well,
Yeah.
It does show a little bit on camera. And I know what that does to our camera gear and our lines. I can only imagine trying to keep this clean and tidy,
Yeah.
and getting here in less than ideal, rainy circumstances. It's a real commitment.
It is, yep.
It is. I mean, it's not always easy, and so I hope when the crowds come in and the 30,000 people walk by and the little kids
we
come
hope
in,
they come up
it
here.
clicks.
Yeah, it does. We do keep those blankets on them just to keep people
Yep.
from kind of, pawing them.
Yep.
We're here with our son Tim too. He's the shepherd, and
Yes.
another young man who was in our 4-H club, Elijah Marker. They'll be showing the sheep, and I think that's another important view shed we're providing the public, is that youth are engaged in this activity.
I agree.
And that all the people knitting out there, if they want that local fiber, or they're already aware and want to support local fiber farms, we need to keep that next generation
Yep.
going forward.
Yep.
So 4-H and these types of venues are really a great place to support them.
Could not agree more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah. You support it with your dollars and as a concept, right? I mean, this you
Absolutely.
have to. Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Yes. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much.
Oh, you're
for
so
chatting with
welcome.
us.
Thank you for asking us.
I just kind of want to dive
you
into
could-
the
yeah,
sheep.
isn't she?
May
I know.
I just bounce?
Oh, of course.
Oh, this is just delightful.
Hopefully she's pregnant too already. She's been in with the ram lamb since August. So
Hazel,
hopefully.
you're gorgeous.
Hazel, you good girl?
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I hope that was useful.
No, that is, and you obviously know your stuff. So,
Oh, I
no,
don't know
you
about
do
that.
very much so. Very much so. Oh, look at that.
Just get can I get some B-roll shots of her?
Oh, yes. Get her face, because her face is so
Yeah.
pretty.
Yep. No, thank you so much.
Oh,
well,
you're
you
welcome.
do know your stuff. You
Oh,
really do.
thank you.